Hi, everybody. I am Karla Kyte, certified divorce lending professional with My Divorce Mortgage Planning. And today I want to welcome Jennifer Berryhill. She is with Evolve Law, and she is an LLP that stands for a licensed legal paraprofessional. And this is a new category, I guess, if you want to call it that, in the state of Colorado. And we can talk a little bit about how LLPs came about and so on. But Jennifer, how did you? First of all, let's start with this. How long have you been in family law? Like, what is your background?
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Karla. I'm really excited to be here and to share with your listeners a little bit more about what an LLP is and does, because it's such an incredible opportunity for Colorado. So I actually got my associate's degree in paralegal clear back in 1993.
Wow.
So I immediately jumped into whatever I could, and it ended up being family law right out of the gate. And, you know, over the years since then, I've kind of bounced around in different fields of law, but I kept finding myself ending up back in family law. And one of the bigger reasons why I enjoy that field is because as a paralegal, you really get an opportunity to really support the client.
Hmm.
So we're developing a strong relationship with the folks that we represent. And a paralegal doing family law actually does a lot to really support that client in their divorce process, in their APR case, if they're doing a modification. And so it tends to require a little more handholding. Divorce and family law, just by nature, it's a lot of traumatic, emotional experiences for people. And
Yeah.
so, and I've really enjoyed being able to help and hold people in their process through their divorce process, but also, help them kind of navigate through the emotional aspects as well. So it
Yeah.
can be kind of a fine line sometimes, but it's great that there is that support behind the scenes through that really traumatic process that people are going through.
For sure.
So,
I didn't realize that you'd been a paralegal for that long. That's a long time.
yeah.
So I think, that's one of the misconceptions that are out there with LLPs. When I'm teaching, I teach a lot of realtor CE, and when I'm teaching my CEs to realtors, I think that they think, using an LLP in a divorce is definitely a more affordable option, which is one of the reasons why we have the ability to use an LLP, right?
Yeah.
But I think I think the misconception is that the thought is that an LLP is not as good as
Mm,
an attorney, right? Which
sure.
in my mind, you guys are every bit as good as. I know you have a couple of limitations, so I don't know if you want to speak on that a little bit or talk about. I'm happy to have you share why the LLP was introduced in the state of Colorado.
Well, and to touch on what you just said, I mean, there's a big learning curve going on with, the actual program itself. And one of the things that it does, it provides more choice, I think, for people. Some people are looking for a more, not only just affordable, but an option to where they can, more actively engage and navigate their process themselves, so
Mhm.
an LLP can kind of support people that, maybe want limited scope representation, representing them in aspects of the case, providing strategy sessions. There's a lot that we can do to help kind of bring in more affordability, but also allowing that client to advocate for themselves to the degree that they really can if they want to.
Mhm.
And then, traditionally, I mean, well, actually, we can't say traditionally because this is fairly new, but so the whole mission of the program, this was brought in through the Colorado Supreme Court. I think it officially took hold in July of 2023. So there were two cohorts so far. I'm in the second cohort, so I was just recently licensed.
Okay.
And And it's the spirit of creating more access to justice because there was a massive justice gap. The courts are literally flooded with a lot of people that are in their process running it on their own.
Yep.
And what's so beautiful is that an NLP can really help educate clients on, the actual process and be able to be there for them through a lot of what an attorney can do for them as well. So they're getting very experienced legal professionals who had to get the legal education, pass a very rigorous exam,
Yeah.
and, we have a code of ethics. We are bound by the same confidentiality laws, just like an attorney is. And, so the limitations, it's a limited scope. So some of those limitations are that, an LLP can't really help a client that's got a really complex case. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have a high net worth or anything, but like, let's just say there's a trust or maybe some business assets that need to be valued, anywhere where an expert may be required to step in and support on an aspect of the case. It can push the LLP out of scope. But it still doesn't require that the LLP withdraw. The client can still
Right.
present themselves and or get, an attorney to represent them on that aspect of the case.
I think, I mean, even in cases where they are complex and working with attorneys, don't attorneys bring in other experts as well? I mean, you guys would just bring in like a business eval expert, right? Um,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah. So I,
And anymore, like you can build a really creative divorce team. Like you and I can team up and
yeah,
offer some really incredible services to our clients that, we're plugging into parts where your skill set is yours, my skill set's mine, and we're really kind of nurturing the process for the client together, but just in the ways that we know where we're staying in our lane.
right,
And so there's a
right.
lot that we can, build on as a team.
Yeah. I think, when the question of experience comes up with LLPs, I think that, and this is probably just something that you guys as a group need to get out to the general public is that you guys have been doing this work for years,
Mhm.
right? You know the work. It's not like you just did a career change a couple months ago and decided to take your test and become an LLP,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think, most of the LLPs have been paralegals in family law for what, a minimum of 8 to 10 years, probably something.
Yeah, and I think it
Yeah,
might even be more than that because the majority of the ones that I know, I mean, we're talking at least 20 years for a lot of
yeah, yeah,
LLPs.
yeah,
And so, we come with a lot of background, a lot of experience, and, getting to work, the full spectrum of the case gives us a lot of that experience too. And, we get to support attorneys that really rely on the paralegal to do a lot of the work to help save
yeah.
money. But, we have a lot of skill that we bring that, helps move that case forward. And so, and it's really exciting for anyone that is a family law paralegal that wants to maybe branch out and become your own, practitioner. So there's a
And
there's
that's
a
what you've
degree of,
done,
yeah,
right?
entrepreneurship with it too.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've actually branched out, even though you're still in a firm, right? But you're running your own business. Is that right?
Yeah, so I actually teamed up with Tia Zavarez at Evolved Law, and she's building an LLP firm, and I'm actually there as a freelance LLP. So I have my business within her business, and so it's a great way for me to have a lot of autonomy, but at the same time have brilliant mentorship with me.
Hmm.
And anytime something might go out of scope, we have somebody right there, Johnny on the spot, to jump in when needed.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
really like the formula and the philosophy that Tia is creating and the opportunity that it's giving me, to kind of be my own boss within my own practice, but have a lot of the things that, a new LLP might need at the ready. Like I said, that divorce team.
Right. I think it's one thing to get your LLP, it's another thing to be an entrepreneur and start a business, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
all of that can be, I think, a little bit overwhelming. That because you're entering two big new spaces at the same time. And so to be successful, I love this model that she's created for you. I think it's going to be really, really successful. So very
Yeah, I do
smart on her
too.
part.
I'm really
Yeah.
excited about it. And but there's LLPs out there that are in firms,
Mhm.
working full time with firms, and then there's some that are completely out on their own.
Yep.
So we're out there and we're trying to get this, get the word out that this program exists, because some of the benefits are also, like we talked about with affordability. Really experienced lawyers that handle complex cases. They have hourly rates that, well, let's just say an LLP can come in at a quarter to a half of some of the attorney rates in
Yeah.
Colorado. And there's so much need for legal representation that it's really not taking anything off the table for anybody,
Yeah.
but it's increasing that access to having legal representation, which, if we can start unclogging the court systems, people will get into their court hearings sooner.
Yeah.
But really the goal is, to help people find a low conflict, amicable path. And, we're like a thought partner along the way, as well as being able to provide legal advice and, represent them pretty much on, the full phase of a divorce or APR
Yep.
modification.
Yeah. So I think it's important to point that out, that you can in fact give legal advice. That's really what this did for you guys, gave you a voice. And, whereas, because I know a lot of clients, when they're trying to go the more amicable route or whatever, they'll go the mediation route, but a mediator can't give legal advice,
Right.
right? So you are the only other one in that category with family law attorneys that can give legal advice,
Yeah,
right?
right,
Yeah. Okay.
right. Yeah, and
Okay.
we're getting creative on how we can jump in and support people. We can jump in and help them with initiating the case and getting it off the ground.
Hmm.
We can support them in doing all of their financial disclosures and crossing that big hurdle, and then preparing and going to mediation, and then if needed, permanent orders down the road, if we can't come to a full resolution, or the whole process. So,
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? And I've been through a divorce. And just with the work that I do, this is all I do is work with divorcing clients. I can't imagine doing my divorce on my own. So I feel for these people that are taking this on. Some of them I know don't have the money at all. But the people that choose to do it, it just blows my mind. I mean, it is worth every single penny. And I've seen a lot of divorces that that were pro se, and they're coming back now with problems, in their divorce. They didn't settle things properly, or they
yeah,
didn't get good advice. Well, for me, I'm always dealing with people that didn't split property properly. So, that's
right.
usually what I'm involved in. So, um, let me ask you this, because you have so much experience. Um, we don't always get our ideal client, but who is your ideal client? Do you like families with young children, families with older children, like what do you think is your ideal client?
I love that question, and I just find myself really in my glow and my flow when somebody comes to me and they're open, like they
Mm,
want support and they're open to receiving guidance and support. Um, you know, Folks that come in that are very like, it's my way or the highway, or
yeah,
it has to be this way or else. Sometimes that's what creates the high conflict. And
yeah,
so, like, I embrace everybody wherever you're at in your process, but my preference is somebody that actually comes in with a little bit more of a mindset around, let's be amicable, let's find a solution, let's look at this as in many ways as we can to get, to a resolution where everybody's walking away with, feeling pretty okay with what you came up with to leave this
yeah,
situation and this relationship and the process.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna put you in the hot seat here really quick. I have a question for you that it just came to mind. So I know what it meant for all of you paralegals to get your LLP. Can you think of a case with obviously no names, but can you think of a case in the past where a specific case where had you had your LLP, you maybe would have been able to be more impactful in that case?
You know, there's probably a lot of cases where, I could have easily have plugged in had I been an LLP.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing really specific other than, this might be a good bridge into other services that we can create a team with.
Uh-huh.
So I'm in the process. I've almost got my certification as a certified divorce coach.
That's amazing.
And I'm very excited about this
Uh-huh.
add-on to my career and to my offerings. So, kind of to just piggyback that in, like one of the cases I remember having, it was the first time the attorneys decided to bring in a divorce coach to help the client. I was just like chomping at the bit to be part of that because, I could really see the power of the client, the client like realizing that, like shifting perspectives can shift a reality.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you start looking at the problem differently, suddenly options open up and
Yeah.
things that you thought you weren't going to like, you're like, oh, well, maybe that actually might be a good idea. And so I'm really excited to kind of start doing the divorce coaching as another add-on because it can do so much. It can bring so much value to a client or a person going through a divorce. Like
Yeah.
preparing them for what do you need to do to just even start it?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
now you're in it. Okay, so now all the overwhelm and all the pressure and all the uncertainty while you're managing all your emotions. And so,
Yep. And you'll be amazing at that because of all the experience you have with, I mean, why would you not add this into your practice, right?
right, right. Like I love it because again, it can kind of bring affordability because if you're getting things figured out before you start the process, you're
Mm-hmm.
actually that retainer, that first initial retainer that you pay can go so much further if you're
Yeah.
working with a coach because you're
Yeah.
getting clarity around your big issues and like you're coming clear on your objectives and even getting tuned in on, realistic expectations. So that
Yeah.
way, you kind of set yourself up for a better process and it can even, like work with each other as this team to rebuild that new foundation for the future. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it.
I think that's great. I would love to talk to you more too offline about that because I do work with a couple of really wonderful divorce coaches. And to just, share with you a little bit and maybe get you connected also, because I know they can be really impactful and helpful through the process. And I know one of the ways that they have kind of sold themselves is they are much cheaper to talk to than the attorney.
Yep.
So and attorneys are like, yes, please, because we're not therapists, right? Like
Right.
we would prefer it if we had somebody else kind of managing this project, right? They're kind of like a project manager. So I think that's
Yeah.
a great service that you're adding on for sure.
Absolutely, because I think as an LLP, I can speak for myself, and having experience working with many attorneys, we're really focused on the business of the divorce. It's
Yeah.
the black and white facts,
Yeah.
numbers, the deadlines, and what you have to do to get there. And so, we get challenged sometimes with being able to hold the client in their emotion. And
Yeah.
so, clients will call and they're like, I'm just freaking out right now. Things aren't going well with what I thought was going to happen, and so that can eat up your retainer that you have
Yeah.
saved for your legal process. So you can take that part over here and actually work through that emotional side of your process in this divorce and this breakup and the trauma and just all the overwhelm and really like become a solid, credible client actually
Yeah.
that you can come back to your legal process with your attorney and be able to move forward, with a lot more clarity and a lot more stability and groundedness and, being able to make really important decisions, not from
Yeah,
an
just
emotional
having
place,
their head in it, right?
right?
Yeah, yeah. I know, with what I do with the housing part of it, um, I will hear a lot of that, and I'm like, come back here, because I'm not part of any of that. And a lot of times they want to cross, you know, they're asking me a question that's not for me, it's for an attorney or an LLP to answer. It's a legal question, not a mortgage question, right? So I'll have to defer them back to whoever it is that they're working with to get the right answer on that. I'm
Yeah.
not the person for that. So I'm pretty good at redirecting them on that, but I know how that happens. Um, and I also know too that people are in very different spaces during this process. And um, I mean, I've heard really, really wonderful things from clients that are working with divorce coaches and just that they've experienced a better process. So
And there's a large percentage of people that have gone through divorce they look back and say, gosh, I wish I would have had a divorce coach.
yeah, because I had no idea what to expect, right?
Yeah.
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 Well, Jennifer, I don't know, is there anything else that you want to add to our interview? We can do this again sometime too,
Oh,
but
that would be lovely. Yeah, no, it's been great. And I want to just reiterate that there's a lot of options out there for people these days, both to just, kind of encompass both sides of your process wherever you're going in it. And I
yeah,
have a deep passion for helping people find healing in their journey, not just crossing a finish line and getting a decree of dissolution of marriage and never seeing you again. I love to equip people with tools that can set themselves up for an amazing future ahead of them. So
yeah,
I would
I
love
love
to
that so much.
get that out there. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And I believe that too with you. Yeah, you're a great person. So
Oh, thank you so much.
yeah, people would not go wrong, definitely in retaining your services. So how do they find you? And we'll have your information posted with this video, but if you want to just let people know how to find you.
Sure. My email is Jennifer, JENNIFER, at evolved-law.com. And you can reach out to me easily, text message, cell phone, 303-506-1319.
Okay.
And we can connect and I can get you to my intake form and we can make sure we run conflicts checks and everything before we start any nitty-gritty discussions, but that at least connects us and then we can go from there. So
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to having many more cases with you. I really appreciate just the person that you are. And yeah, I think you're amazing.
oh, I think you're amazing too, and I'm so excited that we're connected because we're bringing such value to what people really need going through a really difficult time. So
Yep.
I love being on your
Sure.
team.
For sure. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, you too.